Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. So this is the Food Literacy Virtual Lobby Day. So we will be talking about the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative's campaign to expand food literacy through all K through 12 schools in Massachusetts. And we're going to hear from several speakers about their experience with food literacy and why it's important to expand it through various ways. So perhaps we could go to the next slide. Thanks, Becca. So I'm Brittany Peets, and I am the program manager at the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative. And as you see, we'll hear from various speakers about food literacy from the perspective of students, teachers, and others. And it would be great if people could introduce themselves in the chat. Oh, sorry, I've been told people can't hear me. Sorry about that. Is that better, Sue? Can you hear me better now? Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for saying that. So yes, if you'd like to introduce yourselves in the chat, that would be great. You can write your name, where you're coming from, and maybe something that you're excited about growing this season. It seems like this is a time for gardens, home gardens, and school gardens. So tell us what you're excited about. Great. So maybe could go to the next slide. Wonderful. So if you're not familiar with us, the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative, we are a statewide nonprofit, and we focus on food policy issues, and we do that through doing research about specific topics. We do network building and advocacy. And what we work on is based on the recommendations in the Massachusetts Local Food Action Plan. And one of the things that this project is addressing is bringing back food system education to schools. Next. So the goal for this project is to make sure that all students in K through 12 public schools in Massachusetts learn about nutrition, agriculture, food justice, and culinary skills. And that can happen in a lot of different ways, in different classrooms, as well as in the cafeteria, school garden, and community. Next. And so just as a little bit of background on how we got here. So last year and the year before, we conducted over 100 interviews with teachers, including many who are on the call, as well as nonprofit educators and state agencies, both within Massachusetts and elsewhere, to get a sense of how food system education is currently being taught, and maybe what we could do better. So then last year around this time, we published a report on food system education, which included a lot of the case studies of the people that we talked with, as well as some of the things that, some recommendations that would help to expand food system education throughout the state. This past summer, we identified a steering committee, which helped kind of translate those recommendations into more concrete policy asks. So both in terms of legislation as well as funding that might be needed to support this. And so to that end, in January, Representative Vargas and Senator Lewis introduced an act to promote food literacy. And that addressed a lot of these kind of challenges that teachers had mentioned. Last month, a House budget amendment was introduced. Unfortunately, it wasn't passed, but we have another opportunity this month. So Senate Budget Amendment number 87 was just introduced, which would add staff capacity at the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, as well as the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And I'll go into more details on both the bill and the budget in just a moment. Great. So some of these challenges that I mentioned include that food literacy isn't included in most state frameworks or tested on the MCAS, so it can be hard for teachers to justify including it in the school day. Some teachers have trouble finding high quality lessons that are appropriate for their classrooms. And then some teachers haven't learned about the food system before, and so maybe don't feel confident teaching about it. And then also schools maybe don't have funds for materials for cooking or gardening lessons. So the bill that was introduced in January that I mentioned, so it would add food literacy to the list of topics that students should learn about in schools. It would ask DESE to identify some of these high quality lessons that teachers could incorporate into their teaching. And then it would also provide professional development for teachers around these topics. It would create a trust fund that would help schools have some more funding for these lessons. And then it would also convene a working group to guide the implementation of food literacy. And then the budget, that's kind of why we're here today. So Senate Budget Amendment number 87 was just filed by Senator Lewis. It would ask for $1.25 million to support many things that we feel like would make a big difference to teachers and students. So it would add an agricultural literacy coordinator position to the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources. And so this person would kind of connect schools to the Massachusetts food system by bringing farmers into schools or bringing schools out to farms through field trips, et cetera. And then it would also add a food literacy coordinator position at the Department of Elementary Secondary Education. So this person would help to integrate food system into lessons into curriculum, and it would also help to add it to state frameworks. They would be a point person and share out information about professional development or grant opportunities. And then we'd like to see it fund a pilot program so that 5 districts could hire food literacy coordinators. We've heard from some districts that have this position that it's been really critical to making that connection between what's happening in the classroom and the cafeteria, as well as being the person who is applying for grants or helping to kind of oversee school garden implementation. And then it would also fund food literacy materials, as well as field trips. We hear that funding for transportation for field trips can be a big barrier, so that would help to kind of offset that. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on today, is really learning more about how this budget amendment would help expand food literacy. And then once we hear from everybody about how this would make a difference, we'll set aside some time to reach out to your senators to ask them to co-sponsor Senate Budget Amendment number 87. Next. So great. So unfortunately, Senator Lewis, who both filed the bill in January and filed this Senate budget amendment, wasn't able to make it, but he did come to our kickoff that was in January. And so we're just going to play a clip from what he said. And so in his talk, the budget amendment hadn't been filed. So he talked mostly about the bill, but I think there are obviously a lot of overlaps between the topics that this addresses and how they both work together to address some of these issues.
Thanks so much, and apologies to all that I was running a few minutes late. It's great to be with you. I want to thank Brittany and Winton and the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative, for all the incredible work that you're doing to lead the charge for food literacy in our schools and our communities. I am really excited, to partner with you all. I think we all understand that, we have what I would describe as a toxic food system in the United States. We have a food system that results in poor health outcomes, for individuals and communities and for our public health system at large. We have a food system that results in numerous environmental harms. And we have a food system that really isn't sustainable or equitable for meeting the needs of all of our communities, particularly disadvantaged communities. And indeed, it is a system that disproportionately harms children of color and those from low-income households. I believe, as I know many of you do, that a key to changing this toxic food system is food literacy for our young people. It is a key to change. And that's true, I think, for an individual in his or her life, for a family, for our community, and ultimately, that is what will lead to the systemic change that we need in Massachusetts and in the United States. So food literacy, I think, underpins those levels of change that we really need. Providing students with accurate information about healthy food, giving them more opportunity to access fruits and vegetables and other healthy foods, not only improves their own health, but also enables them to understand the systemic issues, that make our food system unjust and unsustainable. We can celebrate that many schools across the state already include food literacy in their curriculums. Some of our schools have their own gardens. Some of them have relationships with local farms and other programs like that. And this is great. And these are all things to celebrate. But what we really need is equitable access and food justice for all, because every student deserves access to healthy food and education about nutrition and food systems. This shouldn't just only be for a lucky few who in certain schools or communities access this kind of education. It should be true, for everybody. And, importantly, bringing food literacy into our schools doesn't need to be difficult or burdensome for our teachers or administrators. Food literacy can be integrated into existing science, math, social studies, or health classes. Research has shown, for example, that using food-based science and math lessons, such as understanding how to read nutrition labels, for instance, increases both students' knowledge of math and science concepts by using tangible examples. It helps make it real for them. I'm proud to be the lead sponsor of this brand new food literacy bill, along with Representative Vargas in the House, who's a great partner, and really appreciate the work that the Mass Food Collaborative and others, have been doing to help draft this bill and to advocate for it. I think that getting this bill passed into law would help, many more teachers in schools to introduce or to expand the food literacy programming that they can offer for their students. I look forward to our work together, and I'm very grateful to all of you for your support and for your advocacy on this critical issue. Thank you. Thanks so much. And
great. So as you heard, I think that Senator Lewis gave a great overview of what the kind of food system looks like and maybe some issues that it has, and hoping that by educating kind of the next generation, we'll hope to address some of those larger issues, as well as kind of the personal everyday issues of making sure that students have healthy meals and know how to prepare them for themselves. So now we're going to hear from some of those students. They also weren't able to make it in person, but they made a great video from their school garden.
Hi, my name is Erica and this is Lulu, and we're part of the REC Youth Grow program where teenagers come together and learn about urban farming.
Youth Grow teaches us about veggies and how to grow them and their nutritional value.
Youth Grow engages in food systems by educating youth on how to access and consume healthy, affordable produce. In doing so, youth are more encouraged to try out the fresh fruits and vegetables on the farm.
As a student myself, I know that it's important to learn about food literacy so I know what I'm eating every day to day meals.
Funding food literacy will allow us to help more students in exploring new opportunities within our communities for success. Engaging more with the food that we consume will allow us to create the best future that we can.
Great. And so now we'll hear from Brianna Jackson. She is the Farm to School Coordinator at Chicopee Fresh.
Ooh, next slide. I'll get started. Okay, so I am in Chicopee, Massachusetts, which is in the western side of the state. Our school district serves about 6,800 students at 15 different schools. And so what I do is quite a few different things. I manage our school gardens. I do taste tests in the cafeteria. Part of my job is also networking with local food vendors, so local farms and food hubs, and other kind of local food producers within the state and the New England region. I also order produce, so I work in the food services department. So I'm ordering all of the produce and local food that we're serving on our menus. I do advocacy work like this. And I also have community partnerships within Chicopee, the farmers market, the public library, and the Boys and Girls Club are probably our closest ones. So I'll be out kind of talking about food, which is my favorite thing to do. So it's awesome. So it's definitely a privilege that our district has a full-time person doing the work that I do within our school department, and definitely helps me kind of have some presence in all of these 15 schools. It's definitely hard when it's one person and there's 15 schools and 6,800 kids. So there are some limitations associated with this. So from school to school, there's kind of an inconsistent interest in the school gardens, where some schools are super invested. They're out like ordering their own plant starts and kind of networking within the city to get their beds in good shape. And others, it's kind of like, all right, Bree, when are you gonna go plant? So really kind of all across the board with that kind of investment. And then within my job, since I have so many different responsibilities, I'll be at the schools for a taste test, and then I'll have the custodians asking me about the gardens, or I'll try to kind of meet the principal because I haven't really talked to the principal yet, or been over there to do that. And it's not always the first thing that they think of, is to reach out to the food service admin department and kind of find who the farm to school coordinator is. So I really have to put myself out there and kind of make connections with them. And so I'll be in the cafeteria, we'll make a sample, like if it's for the Massachusetts Harvest of the Month program, some sort of exciting. Last month was potatoes, so we had these purple potatoes, or, you know, we grew all these radishes, made some like goofy radish salsa. And so we're, you know, I'm trying to like explain all of this to the kids. I have very limited amount of time to like interact with them, and their lunches are already so short, so they're only getting like 15 to 20 minutes per lunch period. So it's hard to kind of engage with them in the same way as maybe I would if I was like in a classroom and like had these connections with teachers and was really out there, and like if they had an incentive to teach this stuff versus just something that's kind of like an added incentive in the cafeteria. We do have at one of our high schools a technical program where we have students that are learning culinary and horticulture, and we're just starting to get some co-op positions within our food service department for students in the culinary program to actually like prepare and help serve lunch, which is super cool. And the horticulture kids are out assisting with kind of fixing some garden beds at one of the schools, which is really good to kind of get them out and involved in the greater school community. And yeah, so it's like the communication with the different schools is really, it just varies a lot. And it would be nice to have, you know, additional support with kind of making this, you know, just like a greater mission at all of the schools versus something that I feel like I have to market to lots of people. And when I'm working with people, I'll get kind of a short-term intern, somebody that's a dietetic intern that's working with my boss, who's the food service director, or somebody that's a high schooler in a summer position with kind of limited transportation. And so it'd be good to just have like all of the work that we're doing really beefed up. So I'm really excited about a lot of the projects that Brittany talked about. And if we were able to get these like DESE and MDAR positions where people are really out there coordinating the stuff and showing the kids like what's actually going on, and assisting with getting kids from Chicopee to a farm in Hadley, or from Chicopee to out in Boston, and we'll see some like a fishery or something. And to do that work. So it's really exciting. And I would love to see some of this happen because it would make the work that we're doing just all that more meaningful. So yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brianna. Becca, if you don't mind going the next slide, Brianna has some very colorful photos
Yes,
of some
my
of the things she was
radishes,
talking about.
my
Yeah.
colorful potatoes. And oh, this is the really cool little taste test that we did with one of the elementary schools. So one of our dietetic interns was Chinese, and she was like, you know what we do that's really cool? We take tomatoes and put sugar on it. I was like, that sounds really interesting to have the kids try. I feel like I'm definitely do like a lot of fear factor type stuff with them, or like try this goofy thing. And they really liked it. And I didn't actually, I think maybe I tried it, but yeah, it was really cool to see them and to get to like connect with them with our intern and getting to like tell her like story of trying them in the summertime in China versus like here at the school cafeteria. So it was cool.
That's great. Yeah, it's so great to hear about all the different things that you're able to do and how kind of important this position is to pulling all those things together to make sure that students are
Yeah.
really learning about food in the cafeteria as well as in the classroom.
Mhm.
Thank you. Next, we're going to turn it over to Dinah, who's at Mass Farm to School.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Dinah Mack. I'm the Education Program Manager at Massachusetts Farm to School. And I came to this position after 20 years as a classroom teacher. I was a middle school social studies and history teacher for my whole career before joining Mass Farm to School. So I guess first I would say, you know, Senator Lewis and the students from Worcester kind of said it all around why this is important in a classroom. As a classroom teacher, I could say that I always saw a connection between academic performance and just the capacity for a school day and food access and healthy food choice. Those are inextricably linked. It was really apparent how students who were eating well and had food access and had knowledge of food and nutrition were really able to have the energy they needed to not just like survive a school day, but really thrive more during the school day in an optimal way. And as a history teacher, I could say that food and food systems education is really a window into studying diverse cultures and history. And it's a really fun way to learn about history and cultures. And food system education obviously can be taught across any K-12 curriculum. I think that when I first got to Mass Farm to School, I always said that it tends to be that we focus on the STEM teachers and we ignore the art teachers and the English teachers and the history teachers who have such a connection to food system education. But they just maybe don't know it because they haven't had the opportunity to be included in food system conversations. And so I think that's really an exciting thing. So you can go to, well, I'll say before you go to my next slide, I'll say food literacy is important to me because empowering students is important to me. And empowering students to make choices of what they eat and how they eat, and allowing them the information they need to make informed choices of what they get to eat is really important. And I think that also giving them knowledge of how their food choices impact their health, impact their community, impact the planet is really essential. It should really be an opportunity for all students to have. And I think that studying food systems allows us to really study the richness of food history and the diverse humans on the planet. And it's really exciting. And so I think everyone should have access to food system ed. And I'll tell you, if you go to the next slide, I'll tell you what I do to connect to food system education. So if you don't know Mass Farm to School, we are an organization that works with schools across the state to our mission is on this slide. You can read it yourself. In my role in Mass Farm to School, I'm the education program manager. And so I work to develop our professional development for educators and cafeteria. And one of the programs that we have created, we have a Harvest of the Month program for, we've had it for the cafeteria, but a couple of years ago, we rolled out Harvest of the Month for educators, and first elementary and this year secondary. And this is a monthly curriculum that gets sent to classroom teachers who sign up, and they get resources and lesson plans and interesting book choices and all sorts of things that rotate around the Harvest of the Month. crops. And so every month there's a crop, and some months there's a few crops. And we also host monthly professional development, and the topics might be around school growing and gardening, composting, climate impacts, school garden food safety, and all sorts of things. And if any of you want to sign up or send that QR code that's on this slide for this program, please share this. And if you go to the next slide, we also have a year-long professional learning opportunity, which is an institute, and we work with a select number of teams across the state who are rolling out a comprehensive farm to school action plan, and they get paired with a coach and they get invited into this network, and we support that rollout. We also have an exciting program we're starting. It hasn't launched yet, but it's going to be for schools that are interested in farm to school, or teachers, or but they're not really ready for the institute yet because they don't have a team, but maybe there's one educator in a building who's excited, and we're going to work with those people to develop a farm to school team at their school, and then be ready for the institute the following year. So it's kind of going to be a pre-program for the institute. So those are some of the things we do in terms of food system education. And, you know, the funding is just essential. I think this bill is dynamic and exciting. And, you know, schools need funding to do interesting things. And so building gardens, creating mobile classroom kitchens so they can do food prep in classrooms. We focused on a really incredible project called Tasting History that Lowell is happening in Lowell in a civics classroom where students are cooking in the classroom. And in order to do that, you need access to a kitchen in your classroom. So creating mobile kitchens that classrooms can share is a great use of funding. Bringing students out of the school to ports and farms is really exciting, and anything to get people aware of where their food comes from. So I am a big advocate of this bill and this money. And I think that's just what I have to say. And I'm going to put my email in the chat if anyone has any questions or wants to connect with Mass Farm to School.
Wonderful. Thanks, Diana.
Yeah.
Great to kind of hear more background on what you all are working on and how it kind of intersects. And yeah, thank you for kind of underscoring the importance of both food system education and this funding. Thank you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Paul, who is a teacher at Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical School.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm not quite sure what to say. This can go in so many different directions, and I think this is what's exciting about learning food literacy. But I want to start off. I went to an event today at our school. I had nothing to do with it whatsoever, but it was a culture day, and there's a whole bunch of students had decided that they wanted to express their pride in their ethnicity, and it was just such a cool phenomenon to see. People were dressed in traditional clothing, and people had brought food samples in for people, and it's just, for me, it's just, in my experience of traveling in the world, it's like food is a great connector, and it's the first language I think people communicate in, and it was just a wonderful thing to see. I think supporting food literacy is incredibly important. As an educator in the last few years, it's been interesting to see the gaps in people's education about food systems, food webs, food insecurity. Unfortunately, I think people got a first row seat on what a lot of people have to deal with. A polite middle class society usually doesn't. During COVID, when we had gaps in food supplies, people had shortages to deal with. It was a great segue in engaging students in real world curriculum that was current, and we had students researching food webs and food systems and trying to understand why the gaps in the food system were becoming apparent during COVID. The curriculum that we developed over the last few years. So in conjunction with Tufts University and Farm to School, we ran that last school year with our 9th and 10th grade students. It went really well. We used a project-based learning or a service learning exam kind of template, so that students led what they wanted to learn about during their lessons in food literacy. It was very interesting to see what they came up with. It's very interesting to see the growth of like their the vocabulary and understanding of how food gets from place to place and how it gets onto your table. The difficulty we had in getting to do this is not in students being excited about it, which they were. It was getting teachers to find frameworks and state standards that applied to this kind of education. Teachers are under a lot of pressure to make sure they're covering all the standards that Massachusetts requires. MCAS is almost like a threat, constant threat in people's lives. I mean, it's not as, it's certainly a concern that people have to deal with it all. And when you're trying to deal with subject matter that is not backed up by state standards, people want to lean away from it, not lean into it. Given food literacy in Massachusetts some teeth by writing some state standards for it would help teachers, I think, accept it much more easily than they're prepared to do. We've also been developing like community garden projects with Salem Public Schools from our school. I'm trying to word this. I'm trying to stay positive without jumping into negative terminology. But what I've discovered, and I've many conversations with people, that when you're trying to do innovative grant-funded curriculum development, a lot of times the responsibilities fall onto the shoulders of people who step up all the time, and you tend to see the same faces over and over again in new initiatives. It can become like quite a burden for some people to take on more and more responsibilities within their regular teaching days. So I'm thinking particularly about the community garden projects that were set up in Salem Public Schools, which is nearly all volunteer or like teacher volunteer or extra time, with like no extra funding for that whatsoever. And it's a lot of hours and it's a lot of work. And I mean, people are great, they do volunteer, but the fact that there's no real budget really to to get these gardens up and running, I think is a shame. I mean, one thing that we were trying to do by piloting some of these projects was to identify some of the gaps in the food system, get kids some nutritious organic food when it's largely unaffordable for a lot of families. So it is important. It actually does real things. This is not just a show and tell like greenhouse experience for grade schoolers. People are actually creating food at schools to be a part of the food system. These things are being designed to fill those gaps. And I think the more production we can get actually in public schools and community gardens, it can only benefit our communities. The other thing about the community gardens and food literacy is that when schools are allowed to have their own garden, it's like the families that volunteer in those gardens can express their ethnicities in the foods that they eat by the foods that they grow. And having people being able to make those choices, again, is incredibly important. It's like sometimes people live around grocery stores that don't represent their culture. Having the ability to grow in gardens and grow what you want I think is a great thing for people to have. So all I can say is what I hope people would support would be giving the state some state standards on food literacy, finding something in the state budget that helps people do the big projects that are starting to happen by creating community gardens, by developing curriculum, and by giving people some choice and giving students as much choice as possible. All right, and I'm going to conclude, I think. I'm rambling, I think.
That was great, Paul. Yeah, thanks for kind of explaining the importance of having this support at the state level, both for in terms of the frameworks as well as some funding to make sure it's not kind of falling on the backs of teachers or volunteers
Yeah.
to make sure that this happens. So thank you so much.
All right, I just I included some pictures here. There's a project that in the top, the Support Community Gardens. That's an event that we're holding at Carleton Innovation School in Salem on Thursday. And then the middle photograph at the top, that's a professional development day at Moraine Farm or New Entry Farm, where 9 teachers showed up to hear about the curriculum that Tufts developed in this program. And the rest of the pictures, kids really enjoying getting their hands dirty and learning about food.
That's perfect. Thank you. And now we're going to hear from one of those students. So if you could skip, Becca, to one of the next slides. Yeah, I want to make sure that the next one. Perfect. Yes. So Miriam is a student at Codman Academy. And I want to make sure that she can make her train home. So we're going to have her talk about her experience being both a student as well as a food ambassador. So Miriam, turn it over to you. And I think you have some pictures on the next slide. So maybe if we go to the next slide. So Miriam, if you want to take yourself off mute. Chetna, do you want to maybe give an introduction?
Yes, Miriam, I hope you are still there. I think I see you. Do I see you in the list? Yes, you are still there. So that's wonderful. Hello, everyone. I'm Miriam. As soon as you're ready, just interrupt me and I will stop talking. This bill is one of the many needs that is the call of the time and need of the time. Our Codman Academy, we are a small charter public school in inner city Dorchester, and we have been able to actually reap the benefits of farm to school program, or the programs that support classroom education in not inside the classroom, but in the school gardens, getting students out there. And nothing has been more evident than to see how it actually really impacts behavioral and mental health of students, not just the learning part of how food grows and connecting them to their own history and culture, how they, you can see some of the photographs here, students learning about harmful pests or beneficial bugs. Miriam is on the way top left corner, where she has been our most awesome ardent supporter of the school garden program, picking strawberries. We use every inch and space. But Miriam, are you still with us? Because you have written a beautiful piece and we want you to read it.
Hi.
Awesome. I'm going to hand it over to Miriam, our high school student at Codman.
Hi, my name is Miriam, and I am in 12th grade at Codman Academy Charter Public School in Dorchester. Codman Academy has established a well-organized farm to school program for the past 3 years, and I am happily a part of this program as a youth food ambassador. I have previously worked for a program called the Teen Urban Food Corps that plants trees throughout the city of Boston. As part of a program called Codman Food Ambassadors, we are able to get a unique learning experience for growing food, connecting with local farms, and creating urban agriculture initiatives like youth farm market and healthy food stands. This food ambassador program is a platform for which we proudly stand and share our support for the Bill Act to promote food literacy programs. That's really it. I just like to say that I'm really happy to be a part of this, because I really feel like we need more of this throughout our schools and basically statewide, because not many students have a chance like I have had to actually grow things in their backyard or school. So from my experience growing food in the garden, we have vegetables that I usually don't use to eat at home, so it gives me a chance to get exposure to them, like okra, radishes, and kohlrabi, and kale. It was great to have a chance to not only take part in growing them, but also teaching them how to keep them fresh and maintaining the garden. And that's it.
Thanks, Miriam. It was great to hear about what you've been growing and why it's important to you, and why it's important to you that other students get this opportunity. So thank you. Wonderful. So next we're going to turn it over to Chris, who is a teacher and also involved in Mass Ag in the classroom.
Great. Hello, Chris Gutak. I am the Vice President of Massachusetts Agriculture in the Classroom. I'm also a high school math teacher. And at Mass Ag in the Classroom, food literacy is super important to us. Obviously, that's our mission, is to educate teachers on how they can bring agriculture into their classroom and use the standards, use agriculture in every standard, not just science. I know that was mentioned earlier. And we work on connecting teachers with opportunities for connections with farmers, but also with curriculum materials that they can use in their classroom. And one of the ways we do this is through our workshops and conferences, and just put a plug in there that we're having a workshop on June 10th in Central Mass at a bus tour of farms in Central Massachusetts. It's a full day traveling conference if anyone is interested in attending. All information is on our website. But so we do workshops in person on farms. We also do virtual workshops throughout the year. We usually do about once a month. We have a speaker come on Zoom and talk about different agricultural topics. We also offer mini grants for teachers to apply for starter funds for school gardens or for other agricultural products that agricultural products to use in their classroom for lessons, etc. So we give teachers the opportunity to get some extra funding to do some of these projects. And like I said, we also have lessons and that are directly tied to Massachusetts standards, but we also have access to some at the national level that are from our national partners that we can connect people to as well, that are standard specific. So go to the next slide. So yeah, that in the if you go to our website, we have some Massachusetts-based lessons. We also have school garden manuals and guides on starting a school garden, food preservation, different things like that. And we are also connected to the National Agriculture in the Classroom, and they have a massive lesson database that is tied, that you can search by standard. We're currently working on tying all of their lessons to Massachusetts standards as well. So you can search by Massachusetts standards. But in the meantime, you can go on their website and you can search for lessons about absolutely anything that has to do with agriculture. And they probably have a lesson or a book recommendation or a video or all that has been vetted by educators as well as agricultural experts. We also partner with the Department of Agricultural Resources to put out the yearly calendar of Massachusetts agriculture, and we tie every month to different lessons and different facts about the agriculture being presented in the calendar. And we had this program for a while, but since COVID, we sort of revamped it and brought it back as our Teacher of the Year program, where we honor a teacher who is doing great work for agriculture in Massachusetts, and they get recognized for their work for food literacy, and they get a trip to the National Agriculture in the Classroom Conference to learn about agricultural literacy at the national level. So we also have other scholarships for other teachers who would be interested in attending the national conference that travels around the country. So our mission is really to give teachers what they need to make sure that the students can be as agriculturally literate and as food literate as possible. And we provide trainings and resources and really work to try to close those gaps. And I think the money that's set aside in the budget would only help supplement this work. And I think it would really add so much to what teachers are already doing and give them the opportunity to do even more. So any more information about any of the things we talked about, you can find on our website, aginclassroom.org.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's a great overview of kind of what's available at Mass Ag in the Classroom, but also kind of how that dovetails with some of these budget requests as well. So thank you. And last but not least, we have Haley from Backyard Growers talking a bit about their programming and why this is important to support.
Yeah, hi, thank you for having me. My name is Haley. I work as the garden educator for an organization called Backyard Growers. We're located up in Gloucester, and we have a really strong partnership with the Gloucester Public Schools, where we operate 9 different school vegetable producing gardens that produce anywhere from 600 to 1,000 pounds of produce every year that goes directly into our school kitchens. We started as a community-based grassroots organization, so we actually run also community gardens within our city, but our school garden program is my area of expertise, and I really think it's such a fantastic opportunity for all the folks in our city, whether that's families, students, folks who have been through it before and still continue to live in Gloucester, and our community garden members, as it's really become robust. It's in its 10th year this year. So we've been really able to get some fantastic food-based knowledge into our schools through our work. And really developing our 6 to 8 program, especially, which I'll talk about a lot today. So as an overview, again, we partner with Gloucester Public Schools, which we have 2 preschools, 5 elementaries, soon to be 4, they're consolidating this fall, a middle school and a high school. And so for K to 5 or pre-K to 5, we run a school garden program where every spring, we all plant salad together out in our garden. We harvest right before summer comes, and we do a succession planting of fall crops. And then in fall, when they return, we do our harvest again. We also source local produce into the cafeteria from all our surrounding farms up on the North Shore. And this provides kids with a really strong foundation of just like, where does my food come from? How does the food that I get from the farm taste test differ from the food that's offered every day on the lunch line? How is the school garden connected to the community garden that maybe my parents have membership to? Where else does my food come from? How is this different from a grocery store? So it kind of provides them, again, that opportunity to ask those questions and think about the answers, as well as, again, just the skills and camaraderie that's involved when you have a garden space for students. In 6 to 8, when they enter middle school, we have a full curriculum that they follow through, which we call People, Agriculture, and the Environment. And the really great part about this program, and where I came on 2 years ago into my role, I was a 7th and 8th grade teacher. And so again, like we keep talking about standards and the necessity of it to be easily integrated into content that the kids are already learning. And that was a big goal for me in my first year in this role, was ensuring the success of this program to continue, because teachers also see the value of it. And knowing my experience as a teacher and knowing what it's like to have to kind of think about how many standards can I cram into this lesson because I have to get them all done before MCAS, thinking about how this is a helpful like tool for the teachers and a way that it's able to integrate a very hands-on experience with content that they're already implementing into the classroom. You know, I'm not coming in and doing something totally different that's going to actually throw the kids off. And so we follow through 6th, 7th, 8th grade. 6th grade, they grow popcorn, and we focus on the community aspects of food. We grow the corn. We talk about the Neolithic dawn of agriculture. This is all through their social studies classes. We talk about how food started to organize communities that they're learning about. We look at it across the globe. 7th grade moves into wheat, and they're a little bit further along in the studies, the societies that they're studying in social studies. And we talk about, you know, industrialization and how different inventions throughout time allow for things like wheat, which requires a ton of processing to be grown. So we grow wheat, we thresh it, we grind to flour, and we end up baking with it. So we're able to get some culinary aspects into the classroom as well. And then in 8th grade, as their capstone, they experiment with cover crops and organic growing, and they're introduced into soil health and how we're able to actually like maintain all of the school gardens that they've been a part of since they entered school in pre-K, and take a more leadership role in the garden in determining, well, what does the soil need? Let's test it. We tested exactly how farms do for compaction, you know, metals, pH, absorption, erosion. We talk about human activity. We talk about what it's like to grow in a very urbanized environment. And then we make changes through concoctions of different fertilizers and implementing cover cropping. If you hop to the next slide, I have some wonderful imagery of all those things I talked about. So you can see with 6th grade, getting into our origins of agriculture, we grow popcorn. We have to dekernel it. We talk about how corn was, you know, one of the original crops to be, wow, the word is completely blanking for me. You know, cultivated, and how that provided like a basis for civilizations to begin. And once you have a ton of corn and it saves really well, if you have a ton of food, you don't have to worry about foraging every day, power structures develop. How did this like establish everything for societies? Moving into 7th grade as well in social studies, again, it's developing industry. We work more in kind of a living timeline with every lesson. So we harvest using tools from different time periods. You can see that's me and my lovely 3 friends in the middle of July harvesting the wheat. We thresh, and we thresh as a threshing bee, which is an event that, you know, in America happened a very long time ago, but in other societies is something that's still culturally done today. And we experiment with hand versus tool. We mill, and we have a whole bunch of different mills from different timelines that we work with in different cultures. And then we bake our bread, which you can see these girls right here. We're having a grand old time adding their ingredients together. So it's really great. And there's a lot of reflection involved in like how much does it require to make this what we consider a very simple food product. 8th grade, more examples of that. Soil science, literally getting their hands in the dirt. It travels through, you know, we do a couple rounds of testing, really determining what our soil needs, and then applying what we think will help it through our belief in the rule of return in agriculture. What I'd really like to share is on the next slide. These are some student testimonials. We did a letter writing day on Friday focused on this bill. And for these kids, this program, it's funny because they've been doing it forever, more of their life than they haven't, but it's also always still like very new and exciting. And, you know, it's different from school. We go outside and we don't have to really write anything or read anything, but we're still learning along the way. And a lot of them don't recognize how few students in our Commonwealth get to access, you know, this work, which again provides for so much opportunity in thinking about what kids might want to do for a career versus the ideas that they're having around their environment, the ideas they're having around food, their own personal relationship to food, the school foods culture, so much more. So these are from 3 8th graders. I'd love to read them, and then that will be my piece. So from my friend Catherine, I have been learning from the backyard growers since I was in kindergarten. Learning how to grow my own food, take care of my earth, and contribute to my community has been extremely beneficial and fun for me. I know each time that they say we have a project with the growers, the entire class is ecstatic and cannot wait to be outside for a change. In my 7th grade year, I learned how to grow wheat, grind it down into flour, and turn that into bread. I get home from school each time we do work in the gardens with a smile. I tell my family all about it at dinner, and I look forward to more time learning with them. For my friend Joey, the backyard growers has been part of my school experience from a young age back in elementary school. They would come to our school and have us engage in fun and hands-on gardening experiences. We learned a lot about plants, food, and agriculture. Visits from the backyard growers are something that all my peers look forward to because each visit is new and interesting. There's always something to learn from them, like how to cook flatbreads or how to plant squash. I'm very grateful that I was able to have these experiences. And Riley, Backyard Growers is a program that represents a positive way for kids to express their inner green thumb. They combine things from all sorts of actual in-school subjects. This includes math when we weigh our harvestings, science when we learn how things grow, and even history when we learn about inventions used to harvest, grow, and even make the food with the plants. I personally have learned so much through this fun experience and hope many other children will get the same opportunity. We got to learn where our food comes from and got to indulge in the making of products itself. What a wonderful thing to know going into our future. This is all thanks to Backyard Growers.
Thanks, Haley. That's great. And thanks for including the perspectives from the students. I think it summarizes really well kind of why all of us feel like this is important, and perhaps language that we could use when we talk to senators, which is what we're going to do in our last couple of minutes that we have remaining. Thank you, Becca. Yeah, so I'm going to put in the chat how you can find who your senator is and how to contact them if you don't already know. And then we've written a bit of a script. Feel free to kind of embellish and, of course, add your own personal details and kind of things that you are really excited about around food literacy. But this is a really important time this week to ask senators to co-sponsor budget amendment number 87. And so we'd love to spend a couple minutes now doing that. So then it's, as Becca said, one thing that you can check off your to-do list for this week. So now that you have all this great information, you can put yourself on mute. If you can turn your video off and just pick up your phone and call your senator. Becca, is there anything I forgot?
I don't think so. I mean, I would just say that, like, we only do this work together. We don't do this work alone. And so I find it really helpful to do this just from a pure accountability perspective, and to know that you all in this Zoom room are doing this call with me. I know it's always a little nerve-wracking to call your legislator, but you know what? They're there for you, and they need to hear about why this is important in their districts. So I'll be calling Pat Jalen, who's my state senator. And if anyone else wants to put their state senator in the chat, we'd love to hear who you're calling into today. So thanks for all the speakers. This was wonderful.
Thanks, Becca. Okay, go for it. Great. Well, I don't know if anybody actually was able to reach any live person. Feel free to write that in the chat. But hopefully everybody has the inspiration they need to reach out to their senators this week to ask them to support Budget Amendment 87. I want to thank all of our speakers. I think it was great to hear this wide variety of perspectives on why this is important. And I will definitely follow up with some more information. So thank you all. Thanks, everyone. Bye.